So Maria Hinojosa has a very long and beautiful bio. We're going to read the whole bio because you can find that online, or you can go on our website, mccneb.edu/Hispanic, and find her program, which tells you some things about her. But let me just share a few things. She was the first Latina in many newsrooms. This led her to want to give a critical voice to the diverse American experience. And due to that, in 2010, she created Futuro Media, which is an independent nonprofit organization, and it creates multimedia content for and about the new American mainstream in the service of empowering people to navigate the complexities of an increasingly diverse and connected world. Many of you are familiar with Maria Hinojosa. She's an anchor, she's an executive producer, she's co-host, she's a political analyst, and she has contributed to PBS, CBS, WNBC, CNN, NPR. She has an Emmy Award-winning talk show called Maria Hinojosa One-on-One. She's the author of books, has won dozens of awards, and has been honored with her own day in October by New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. Recognized by People in Espanol, she's considered one of the most powerful Latina women, and we're so honored to have her today. She was the first to report on youth violence in urban communities, and she called attention to the experiences of those in detention, the immigrants in detention centers, that helped to get some changes. So I'm going to say, finally, let's just welcome Maria Hinojosa. We're so delighted to have her with us today.
Woo! What's up? What's up? Hey, MCC. What's up, MCC? I wish I was there. I love MCC. And you know, I love Omaha. In case you didn't know that. It's one of my favorite places. And a lot of people are like, why? So it's very special for me to be invited back. And it's good to see many of you. And yeah, I'm glad that we're going to make this into a conversation. That's what I enjoy the most, is being able to answer your questions and to have a dialogue. You know, if I was there in person, we'd be hanging out, we'd be going to have a meal, we'd be having a lot of this interaction. And I would most certainly be hugging many of you because that's kind of what I do. And yet, you know, that's just not happening anymore. I'm an early survivor of COVID. I got COVID in March of 2020, back when we didn't know what was going on. And so a lot of kind of my headspace, really, having lost so many people, especially in New York, you know, where we were the epicenter for so long. And then throughout the country and in my own family, 2 members of my own family from COVID. So I really spend a lot of my time in gratitude. And I know that, you know, when you're in community college or you're trying to find your way, I honor the path that you have taken, because you are my true heroes. Many of my best employees started at community college. So it is something that for me, like being like Omaha, you know, I don't know. I like people, places, and things that are considered to be like underdogs or less than or flyover. Like, so I really want you to know how much you inspire me, how much the students in particular inspire me. Yes, you have great, you know, instructors and faculty and administrators and community members who, you know, want to support what you do. But to me, that decision of like, nah, I'm going to go to MCC. I'm going to do this. I want you to recognize the gumption. And there's a great word that we have in Spanish, which is the ganas. Can't really translate. Ganas is desire, but desire is like too it's too prescriptive. Ganas is like visceral. It's like a visceral desire. It's like that thing that pushes you, sadly, right now, when we think of the border and you see these horrific images, and what people are not understanding is that those, in my view, and I'm happy to discuss this with you, the people who are there are like the winners of the picture. Like they made it to the line. They got there. And we should be celebrating. One, it shouldn't be so hard. Also, it's legal to do this, to come into the United States and ask for asylum. They are doing nothing illegal. But what would happen if our news media, instead of just celebrating Latinos and Latinas for a month, a half a month here and a half a month there, if we actually realized how powerful we were all of the time, and how that immigrant spirit, whether it is Haitian, Honduran, Colombian, Bangladeshi, that those ganas, and many of you students are the direct descendants of those ganas. And I'm just giving it back to you, that you have the ganas, that you are there at MCC. Seriously, I'm super proud of you. And I really hope that you're asking yourself, what is the biggest, craziest dream that I have? Which is the question that I ask my students at the Ivy League college where I teach, right up the street here at Columbia University, Barnard College in New York City. And I ask my students on the first day, what is your craziest, wildest dream? And I want you to answer that question for yourself. What is the craziest, wildest dream? Now, if it's playing for the NBA and you're 5 feet tall, that's hard. I get that. But if you're like, I want to, like my students, I want to travel the world, or I want to buy my mom a house, or I want to become a lawyer and work in defense of immigrant rights, or I want to be in a Hollywood movie, or I want to make a Hollywood movie. I want you to hold on to those dreams, because the thing that got you to MCC, those ganas, is what's going to propel you forward. And it's not easy. All of us have those days where you're like, oh my God, really? We're commemorating the 20th anniversary of September 11th. And so, of course, I'm thinking a lot about, that time. And I developed PTSD. I was here in New York. I covered it for CNN. And I didn't have the option because I had to go to work every day. But I did develop PTSD. And I know that many of us on the question of being Latino or Latina in the United States of America, or being an immigrant, or being undocumented, or being a refugee, there's a lot of trauma there. What makes me sad is that our stories, writ large, are not, again, celebrated and held up as like these great American. They will be. You know why? Because I run a media company and I make these stories and I make journalism, but the next level is going to be to make big Hollywood productions, right? To tell these stories on a massive scale. And we will do that because I'm continuing to dream big. Forgive me, there's a siren coming. This is Harlem, New York City. Okay, good. It went the other way. Bravo. So I want to encourage you to dream super big. That's very, very important to me. Now, why do I love Omaha and Nebraska so much? I mean, I've been going to Nebraska since the early 1990s. It was in Lincoln. I know there's a little rivalry, but it was in Lincoln where I spotted and experienced my first ever massive thunderstorm. The kind that I'm talking about. And it's something that I'll never forget. And the people that I met. It was in Lincoln where I did the story about the KKK ringmaster who was threatening a Jewish cantor, and then they became best friends. I mean, I met them. It happened in real life. Those are the kinds of things that happen in Nebraska. in Omaha. I have so many memories now of running. The last time I was there, I think was in 2019. And so I was taking these long runs because you could do that. Also in Omaha, driving into the Barrio Latino, just like turning the corner. Actually, it's a main street. So just not even turning, but just like being there. And all of a sudden it's like tienda de fiestas and the party store and the quinceañera store and the panaderia and the this and just all of the life that we have and the color and the vibrancy. And it's not performative. It's who we are. And yes, that should be celebrated because, here's the big headline, right? From the 2020 census, half of the entire population growth from the United States of America was from Latinos and Latinas. Half of the population growth. And it wasn't from immigration. It was from births inside the United States. That is to be celebrated. It is also to recognize your power. Latinos and Latinas being the second largest cohort after white America, right? The second largest voting bloc after white America. And understanding that Latinos and Latinas are of every race. We are Afro-Latino, we are lighter, we are more proximate to lighter skin, we are indigenous, we are mestizo, we are mixed, Asian as well. So this is to be celebrated. And yet the images, the getting away from the images that are part of the mainstream media. And it's one of the reasons why I do the work that I do, why I created my own company called Futuro Media, that who knows, maybe one of you will end up working for, because that's the way. I have many employees who had a dream and they were from any place in the country and now they're working for us, especially now that people work digitally. You can be based anywhere. So I want to tell you this story of a memory that I have that I think, I don't know, it's a beautiful story and I tell it very often. So it was after the last presidential election, maybe 2 years into the last presidency. And as a reporter, and I encourage you to do this, I like to see people, whether they are working in the kitchen, delivering my food, riding the bike, or driving the car that I'm in. I like to see people. I say, hello, sir. Good morning, sir. Good morning, ma'am. I recognize people because I believe that is an act of respect and it makes people feel visible. And who wants to feel invisible? So I get into the car. I also talk about politics with everyone because I'm a journalist. So I got into the car and it was being driven by a white guy in his mid-50s. And we became friendly banter. And then I said to him, so can I ask you a personal question? And he said, yes. And I was like, okay. I find that very interesting. I always say, can I ask you a personal question? And people invariably say yes. Men invariably say yes. When I would always say, well, it depends on the question, but I'm all ears. So I said, who'd you vote for? And he said, oh, well, and he said, well, I voted for Donald Trump. And I was like, okay, so tell me a little bit about that. And he said, well, I really believe that he needs to build a wall because you have too many immigrants who are gangbangers and drug dealers, and we don't want that. The wall needs to go up. And I said, I said, that's interesting because here in Omaha, you have a very large and vibrant Latino population, right? And he said, yes, they are such nice people. I said, yeah, in fact, their community, like the barrio is like really great. He was like, oh my God, I love that neighborhood. And I said, so do you see all the gangbangers and drug dealers when you're driving through the neighborhood? And he said, no. And he was like, is there a trick question here? I was like, no, I'm just asking you what you see. And he said, well, okay. So maybe I don't see the gangbangers and the drug dealers. Okay, maybe the wall. All right. But you know what? I believe that there needs to be the Muslim ban. And I said, interesting. I said, that's interesting because Omaha, actually, there's a large Muslim population here. And he said, I know, in fact, my neighbor is Muslim, such a nice family. And he said, oh my God, you're trying to trick me. And I said, I'm not trying to do anything. And he himself took a pause and said, wow, maybe I need to stop watching and listening to what I'm being told, and I need to actually see it for myself. And so for me, that's why I love Omaha and Nebraska so much, is because being from the Midwest myself, proud Mexican from Chicago, there is, yeah, I mean, you know, some of it can be fakey fake, but there is a kind of earnestness. And you're a part of that. And for me, the young people who I have reported on from Nebraska, from Omaha, who I spent time with, who were crying because you did not want to cross the border into Iowa to get your driver's license. That's how much you love Nebraska. Crying how much you love the state, but back then you couldn't get your driver's license from here. So I honor your love for your community, for your MCC, for your towns and cities in central Nebraska. I see you, and I don't want you to feel invisible. Whatever it is that you want to do. I mean, I'm just like, well, who's going to be the next amazing filmmaker that comes from this community? Who's going to be the next great director or writer or owner of who knows what kind of business? So for me, you have the capacity to do all of that and more. And that's why I love MCC, because you are a place where I have met so many dreamers, and when there's so much love for what you do. So thank you for keeping me a part of your community. Let's have some questions.
Okay, Maria, thank you so much for that great start. And for those who aren't aware, Maria was our Cinco de Mayo keynote speaker several years back. So we've missed her, and we're just so excited. And some of you out there may be ones who've asked me, when can she come back? Well, we're so happy she's here, and thank you for coming to listen to her. So our first question is, what gave you the inspiration to become a news co-host? What gave you hope? And what was your biggest dream? So that's from one person there.
Yeah. So, I mean, what baby, that's all in the book that hopefully you will get. And basically, I think my inspiration was I didn't want to be invisible. I recognize that I had privilege, and I want to encourage you to understand that you have privilege, even though you're like, well, but I have, you know, financial problems and I'm still working 4 jobs. And yes, but you have the privilege of being in school. And that's pretty extraordinary. There are so many people who would love to be able to be in school and they can't. And so when I recognized that I had privilege when I was working at National Public Radio, that was the thing where I was like, wow, I have to use my privilege for good. I have a responsibility to do something. So that was really the reason why I jumped in and ate my fears, because I was scared. I was terrified. I had imposter syndrome. I was really worried all the time, didn't think I was good enough. And I think my hope was to attempt to correct the narrative about who we are in this country, and whether that's correcting the narrative about a place called Omaha, Nebraska, or whether it's correcting the narrative about Black people in the South Bronx. I wanted to be a part of that. And I think my biggest dream, I mean, one of it came true. My biggest dream used to be, I want to be a part of a Hollywood film. And I am. If you have seen In the Heights, there's a scene. I don't look like this, no lipstick. I'm super proud that I said that dream out loud over and over again. And I believe that that's one of the things that helps make them come true. So thank you for your questions.
We have someone who'd like to know, what class do you teach? she said at Columbia.
Yeah, so I'm a professor at Barnard College, which is the women's college of Columbia University, and it's my alma mater. I teach 2 classes back to back on Thursday. The class I'm teaching now is basically writing on trauma and memoir. And the second class is understanding and reporting on immigration. So one of them is a much more a writer's class that is a little bit more kind of intimate. And in the afternoon class, some of the students choose to do a little bit more like thorough reporting, but a lot of them also choose to do things like interview their own family members, because stories around immigration are ones that we don't tell. It's, unfortunate that there's a sense of shame about our stories. That's what I was trying to say, is that if we're not telling these stories of these heroes and heroines, we're losing part of our American history. So understanding how to tell these stories as a good journalist, but also encouraging my students to tell their own stories. And I like to joke that I'm Mexican, so I have 16 different jobs, proud, but I do love being a professor. I really, really love being a professor.
Thank you so much. I want to shout out to the audience. We're getting a lot of great questions in, so keep it up, everybody. We have somebody who's read some of your book, at least, because she's referring to it. In your book, you mentioned the challenges that your job and your passions brought in your relationship. What words of advice do you have for us in balancing home and work life?
Well, that's a hard one. Yeah, and I did, after I finished the book, I was like, wow. So basically, when you're struggling so much in this industry, and as with any industry, but there's a lot of ego involved in the media, and just like, your desire to basically win all those battles and prove yourself, and keep the company alive. And sometimes that meant that you didn't pay attention to the people who were right in front of you. And so it was a difficult pill. I mean, I'm very thankful because my family did not abandon me, and it allowed me to actually do that spiritual work that I would always hear people say, what are you going on a journey? And I'm like, what are they talking about? Well, it's like, you gotta, do a lot of therapy. I ended up meditating, learning how to forgive myself and others, not carrying burdens on my back. All of these things, which I think are really important. So listening, by the way, I still live with my family. I mean, and it was even more intense because, of course, during the pandemic, my 2 adult children were living here with us when we thought we were going to be living alone. So it's been a lot of time of talking with my adult kids and, asking them, so did you miss me? What was that like when I wasn't around? And yeah, and having the opportunity in this time, because we haven't been traveling all across the country, and myself, it's really allowed me to, I don't want to say make amends, but just really spend time with my family in a way that I couldn't before, because I was always on a plane going to Nebraska or name it. So it's allowed me to spend that quality time that I really needed, and understanding that, I was able to put them first.
I agree. That's really a tough question. We appreciate your, taking it in and really giving us some good feedback there. So one of our audience members said, in 2014, I met you in Omaha, and you told our group, Latinas Unidas, to find your passion and remain authentic. I have that on a sticky note at my desk and wanted to thank you for the inspiration.
Oh, see, people in Omaha, they just don't forget. There's these bonds. Thank you. This is, I guess, one of the things that I'm realizing now is that this is really long haul. Like, I really thought like things would be better, like much better. And that's why, yes, this is a celebration of who we are as Latinos and Latinas, but it better be a deep sense of responsibility, because there are a lot of people who are being left behind, and for no reason, really for no reason. So I want us to continue to be authentic and to just realize, like, you know, this struggle, as it were, to be seen as part and parcel of this country. Some days it's easy and some days it's not. And that's just a part of our American story.
All right. So thank you again, everybody. We're doing everything we can to get your questions in, but keep sending them. Maria, I have a question. What has shaped you into the amazing woman you are today? What have been some of the obstacles you have overcome?
I write about this in Once I Was You. I was really insecure. I know people are like, what? You know, I was trained as an actor. So I do think that there's a way of, like, showing up, but it doesn't mean that you're not feeling insecure. And so I wrote about the imposter syndrome and how debilitating that was. Thankfully, I was in therapy, so that helped. And I talk a lot about doing therapy as a way of healing ourselves. I think that there was a lot of ignorance and therefore racism. It was par for the course. I think right now it's a different time. And so there's a conversation about what does this mean, or microaggressions, or that was, it was very different back then. And so I had to pick my battles. I think I'm really proud of the fact that something in me was telling me to trust my own voice. Like when I made the decision to quit being a production assistant, therefore a producer for other people. And I was like, no, you actually want to be telling the stories. You want your voice and your name out there. And that's pretty, so I'm glad that I did that. And I'm glad that there were people. I don't have a series of role models, but there were women along the way, and hugely my husband, the artist whose work is behind me there, who really just talked me up and told me to believe in myself. And that's what it takes. You just have to that's why I'm like, if you're on this Zoom in the middle of the day, you're part of, you got this, you got it. You have to believe in yourself. I got it. I'm going to show up. I'm going to do the class. I'm going to finish the class. and what's the next? I'll tell you briefly the story of Dr. Alfredo Quiñones Hinojosa, who is, he wrote a book called Becoming Dr. Q. It was optioned by Brad Pitt. Dr. Alfredo Quiñones Hinojosa, no relation to me, but I'm this much closer to Brad Pitt because Quiñones Hinojosa is my friend. But he was undocumented. He worked in the farms in California. Then he worked in the railways. Then he had a near-death experience. And he said, I'm not going to work in this for the rest of my life. I've always wanted to be a doctor. And he goes to community college. And he starts at community college. And then he goes to college. And then he is at Harvard Medical School. And now he is the head of neurosurgery at the Mayo Clinic. So he started with this notion of possibility. That's why I'm like, some days you're going to feel like all you got is yourself. And sometimes that's just fine. And if the one day is bad, remember, and tomorrow's another day, and be thankful for it.
So your answer relates to another question we have. Obviously, he's one of your inspirations. Are there others who inspired you growing up, and why?
Well, I mean, definitely Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was the first person who made me feel like I could be a part of this country. Like, for sure. I was like, he was the one who I was like, maybe because I was not an American citizen, So it was like, am I staying? Am I not? you know, as an older journalist, I think the most for me as a role model has been really spending time with Frederick Douglass, who was born into slavery and then, became a free man and created and published and was the editor-in-chief of his own newspaper called the North Star. His statue is just 4 blocks from where I live here in Harlem. And I think about what he went through as a journalist in the United States of America. He is my founding father. So I get inspiration from the fact that I am part of that legacy. I'm just a little blip in the long history of journalists of conscience in this country. But that's what keeps me going.
I'm writing down journalist of conscience. All right. So we have an audience member who would like to know if you consider yourself a curious person, and if so, how has that contributed to your career?
Yes, 150%. I think that that's it's an essence of not only, what is called a lifelong learner, but also for me as a journalist. Oh my God, I'm just infinitely curious. I think I was that way always, mostly because I was living this life, like I write in Once I Was You, where I was crossing borders all the time, like many of you. I was, living in a predominantly, well, it was a very mixed neighborhood, but then I'd go to the Barrio Mexicano, and then once a year we drive from Chicago to Mexico by car. So traversing the entire United States, so I was always seeing difference. And this was curious to me. Someone was saying, like, what in nature, when we're in nature, everything that is different for us, we find it unique. We're like, oh my God, isn't it great that all the dogs look different? There are no 2 dogs that look exactly the same. And yet in with people, it's like, oh, well, we only want one kind of person around. And how much that is a learned experience of racism and exclusion. And so I feel like, I don't know, as a child of, the late civil rights era, I think curiosity extended to my fellow human beings and why people would be treated differently just because of the color of their skin. So yes, I encourage curiosity 150% and encourage people to have dialogue. So I'm like talking to everybody, the guy delivering the pizza, the guy driving the car, the person who I believe that is a form of democracy.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. As a Native American, we are just a footnote in school history curriculum books. Have you advocated to include more Latino history books for our early school education system?
And thank you for being part of our founding fathers and founding mothers of the United States. So I appreciate that. And that you and we are all standing on Native land here, I believe, of the Lenape people. So your question is just very deep, because what I'm going to say is going to be a little shocking. So trigger warning. And I don't mean it to upset you, but I mean it as a way of making you rethink. And I think that doing critical thinking that's what critical race theory is all about, right? It's thinking critically about what's happened in the country. So if indigenous people to this land were to tell the story of the history of this land, it would be quite different, right? If the first sin was, or if the original sin was slavery, then the first sin was genocide, right? And so we are told a story of interaction between, first of all, the first people who came here were not the Pilgrims that we know of. The first people who came here were the Spaniards. So apart from the indigenous languages, the next language that was spoken here was Spanish in St. Augustine, Spain, and then in Santa Fe, and then the settlement of Jamestown, Plymouth Rock. So imagine if we were learning that history. Imagine if people were like, wow, so Spanish, first indigenous languages and then Spanish? Probably a lot of people would be a lot prouder to speak Spanish, and we wouldn't be losing it as we lose our cultural heritage, because somehow we're supposed to become more and more like white America. But why? So if indigenous people were telling the history of this country, they would say that, in fact, so here, trigger warning, I'm going to use a slur. So I'm alerting you, it's not a term that I use, but for purposes of this conversation, who were the first illegal aliens? So why I want to advocate for these stories to be told is so that we can reframe and rethink. And it doesn't mean that we're going to appreciate less the history made by also founding fathers and mothers of this country. And it just is going to make us more curious and a better country. And I have good news. A young reader's version of Once I Was You will be out next year. So I have written a version of this book specifically. I wrote it aiming at 12-year-olds. So it's going to be available, and it's going to be great for teenagers too. And hopefully it will help a little bit of it on the issue of invisibility.
Wonderful. We have a lot of requests for your book, which is really exciting. And we're going to make sure that we get all 75 copies into the hands of someone who will read them. But Maria, before we go on with questions, would you just succinctly give our audience an idea of what that book is and why you chose to write it, so that if there's somebody who's not sure out there?
Yeah. So Once I Was You is a memoir. So it's about me growing up in the tail end of the 1960s, the civil rights era, and how that kind of impacted everything is my experience as a young American, but also I was Mexican. So, it's my story of feeling like the other, but also feeling very much like a part of this country, the confusion that sometimes comes with that. And also stories around being a journalist and kind of feeling invisible and wanting to make a commitment to being a journalist that was telling these stories. And so being the first in many newsrooms and what that was like. And then a lot of the stories that I reported on, which are kind of fascinating, and then also there's a parallel story that I'm telling, which is about immigration history in this country. And so I'd like to say it's like you're getting spinach. You're reading this book and it's really yummy. There's like all really cool, interesting details and intimacies, but you're also getting spinach. You're learning about the history of this country in a way that you're going to be like, wow, this happened. And you'll learn that it's both the Democrats and the Republicans who have thrown immigrants and refugees under the bus. I think it's also a feminist book. It's a book about a woman's empowerment and being a survivor and of assault. So there's a lot of levels of intimacy. Gloria Steinem kind of said it. She was like, it's multiple books in one. It's like layered. And so it's at least that's what people who read it are saying, is that it's kind of delicious because it's got those multiple layers.
All right. I'm sure that people will jump in, and I will say that it's not a difficult book to read. Maria tells us she's coming out with a chill, more youthful version, but even this one, you could sit down and just gobble it up and set it aside and bring it back when it works, a couple pages every night, whatever. So here's another thank you. I want to thank you for being such an inspiration to me. Because of you, I have become stronger and stopped being my true self. During my interview for Miss Nebraska Latina, I was asked, who did I look up to? And I answered, Maria Hinojosa.
You're going to make me cry. Oh my God. I want to see that. If you have it on tape, please send it to me. Oh my God, I'm crying.
And I won Miss Nebraska Latina 2020 and won Best Interview. I prepared myself every day by listening to Latino USA, by
oh my God,
stories you shared about our people and stories about being first generation and to even crossing the border. I am so grateful for you, and I am so amazed by your power, by being such a big representation to us Latina women.
Oh my God. Okay.
But
Yeah,
she she's talking about me. I'm sorry I interrupted, but you're amazing. I am so out of words. Like, I am fangirling today. Like, this is
I need you to focus on her so I can see her, because I can't see her because I'm there.
Can we
No,
see
now it's you.
Dulce's face?
Yeah, if I can see Dulce, please.
Can you do that for us, Isaac?
Go ahead, Dulce. I'm listening meanwhile.
I just said that I'm fangirling today. You are amazing, and I don't even have words. You're my idol, Maria. Like, if I can say someone has shaped me into the person I am today, it is you. And I am shaking of how excited I am to see you, even through a screen. Like, you have helped me so much. And I mean, I'm happy to say that I won Miss Nebraska Latina because of you. You helped me so much. You have helped me break down those barriers. And you're gonna make me cry too, because I don't have words. I'm so grateful to you. And I've never met you. And I just hearing your voice, how amazing you are, the incredible woman you are. You are so unapologetic. And you are the woman that I aspire to be. Once I'm starting to change. I'm starting to, not apologize for who I am, not just breaking down those generational curses, those limitations that we've put on ourselves. And I'm so thankful to you. Just thank you. You're amazing.
So guess, you know what I wanted to do when I was little? I wanted to be in a beauty pageant, but I'm 5 feet tall. So it's like, you'll never be able to do it ever, jamás. So the fact that you like won, and you won not only on your beauty, but on your brains, is like mind blowing. ¿Dónde estás ahorita, mi amor?
Right now I'm at work, but.
And where is work?
Boys and Girls Club.
Okay. So I just want to say that thank you for doing that and for joining. And that, again, you're doing all the things, right? All the things, and you're at work, but you're still tuning in. And thank you for that. You need to be in touch with me. So find me so that you and I can be in touch, because I want to hear more about that. And, the whole idea is that I don't want to be an icon. I mean, somebody was like, yeah, last night I was doing something. Oh, actually, I was doing a live with Jessica Salgado, and she was like, you're an icon. And I'm like, estoy descalza in my bedroom. Like, I'm not an icon, estoy descalza right now. So it's not about being an icon. It's about being real and being accessible. And so I love the way that you took what I do and you made it yours. So dime tu nombre de nuevo.
My name is Dulce Rodriguez.
Okay, Dulce. So you're going to get in touch with whoever it is so that you and I can get in touch. And you can always DM me on Instagram. And that's going to happen. And you're going to get the signed book for sure.
So, Dulce, thank you so very much. And you should be able to find Barbara Velasquez's email. Just, send me a note and we'll get you connected to Maria. And that was really beautiful. And congratulations to you, Miss Nebraska Latina.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much.
Love you, mija. Tell your mom and dad y toda tu familia de que eres una hija extraordinaria. Que dice María Hinojosa.
Thank you so much.
Don't forget.
So I want to thank the employers who allow their employees to tune in with us. And I know that sometimes we get comments that people are tired of Zoom, but I want to remind you, this is making access that maybe Dulce or somebody else might not have had if they would have had to come to the campus. And my current statement is, you all have a front row seat. We don't have to look over somebody. We can be really up there and close to Maria. So that's cool. So we have another comment. Thank you for your compliments about Omaha. We are a city built on immigration from the eastern part of the US, as well as globally. Each immigration wave has built on the foundation of our city and layered our viewpoints to create the mix we have today. I too admire and respect anyone who ventured out in order to improve their lives. All right, question. You said that being in school is a privilege. Can you tell us how you got to Barnard from your home in Chicago? How would you encourage MCC students to think of learning as lifelong?
So I went to public school. We were the only Mexican kids in our public school, and that was celebrated, actually. Oh my God, actually, somehow the principal from that school got a hold of my book, and I wrote about him. And he he actually got in touch. He was like, "You're the same Maria that was so happy, came smiling every day into the principal's office," because I was just so thankful to be in school. At the end of grammar school, I took a test. I was very afraid of tests, but I went into the University of Chicago High School, which was it was a prep school. I was very afraid all the time. I felt like I was never good enough because it was a prep school. It was private school. And I was able to do that because we had half tuition because my father worked at the University of Chicago. And that changed everything, right? Because then I was in a school that actually was a prep school. It was tied to the University of Chicago. And so there was a lot of academic pressure. It didn't necessarily feel good. But I had a friend who was at Barnard, and I visited New York for the very first time to come visit her. And, some people come to New York and they're like, nah, I don't want to be here. It's too much. And others of us come to New York and we're like, oh my God, this place is amazing. I want to live here. This energy is like nothing I've ever felt. And so I was like, I want to come to New York. And I applied to Barnard, not sure if I was going to get in, and I got in. And that, getting into Barnard did change everything, which again, you can apply to Barnard from MCC. I mean, of course you can. So it was, and it's something that we talk about. I have a lot of first generation low income students, children of immigrants, DACA or undocumented. And we talk a lot about, the privilege of being at a place like Barnard. But in the end, they're just like you. Like, there isn't like, oh my God, an Ivy League student. You just put in the work. So I believe you can do whatever you want.
Inspiration. So I'd like to do a shout out to Virginia Newton, who is with her diversity club at Logan Middle School watching today. Isn't that cool that she involved them?
Yes, the middle schooler is going to get a chance to read my book. Yes.
We're going to send books out to the middle school too. I just need Virginia to send me the names of the students. So another question, I'm in my middle 30s. I just started studying at MCC. What advice do you have for immigrants in this category?
Oh my God, you're my hero. I am so proud of you. I'm just like, oh my God. Just like, wow. Not everybody can do that. Like my mom is a badass. My mom is 85 and she still swims, a mile or two in Lake Michigan when she's in Chicago. I know, in the summer. But she didn't finish high school, and we were always like, Ma, dude, they go back. No, she just couldn't, was too afraid. And so kudos to you that you were like, I'm going to do this. And so my message to you is, again, dream big. So start here and literally ask yourself, well, what is the craziest thing that I would want to do? And say it out loud. And I don't know what that is, right? You have to ask yourself. But if you're doing this in your mid-30s, as I say to my students who are moms, because I have students who have been moms, I'm like, you can run circles around anybody. If you're doing this and you're, whatever, managing a life, and you're in community college, you got this. So trust that you, again, can do whatever it is that you set your mind to. Not that it's going to be easy, but none of it is easy.
All right. I think this question might come from one of the middle schoolers. Did you often get along with your parents? And did you speak Spanish at home?
So mom and dad spoke Spanish all the time. That was the primary language in our home. Mom and dad did not force us to speak Spanish, although in some ways I kind of wish they would have. And so I lost my Spanish. It was pretty rough there in the earlier parts of like when I was like 12 to 16. And then when I got to college, I made a decision to recuperar mi español, like to speak it, to study it, to talk it, so I made a concerted effort. And now we speak Spanish and English about the same amount. And my kids are both bilingual. Did I get along well with my parents? Look, I think that's another thing that comes up in the book. I think writing this book, I had to pedirle perdón a mi papá. I had to ask for forgiveness from my father because I'm like, híjole, dad, like I really put you through the ringer because I was the youngest of four. So I didn't have the benefit that my sister had or the whatever. It's difficult to be the first. So I was pretty radical. I was the one who was like, I'm leaving, I'm going to New York. I'm going to be an actress. I'm marrying an artist. So here's what I suggest. Most important is that you feel loved by your parents. It's really important. And some parents have a challenging time. But if there's love, then that's the most important thing. And then I've done therapy. I did therapy with my mom. And I don't feel ashamed of that. We're proud of the fact that we want to try to get to some of the things that, have come up in our relationship. So think about doing that. And also, your parents don't know exactly what they're doing. I'm sorry to tell you. Like there isn't a parent book, an iPad book where it's just like, here, flip to the page. Oh, you got that issue? Here, handle it like this. Doesn't work that way. So your parents are actually really doing the best they can, and they're probably facing a lot of their own fears. It's what I tell my own students. Your parents are scared a lot of the time. They're scared about many things. And so maybe cut them a little slack that a lot of what they're responding to is their own fear. And that makes it difficult to sometimes see you. So keep at it.
All right. The youth book, is there a particular outlet where it will be sold so we can look for it?
Oh, it's going to be sold all over. It's being released by Simon and Schuster. So it's going to be a kind of big deal. So it's going to be everywhere. But, hopefully by then, we'll have taken on the pandemic and I can fly to Omaha and be invited to your local bookstore and you can come there and I can give it to you personally.
All right. Here's another compliment. You have no idea how much I needed this. I have been feeling like I don't belong here nor there. But wherever life ends up taking me, I will make sure to take my education with me. Thank you.
Love that.
How and when did your career change? How did you begin your life in journalism?
I think it really changed for me once I got my internship at NPR. And then it clicked. I was like, because I didn't really know what it was. So once I saw it in action, which is why internships and fellowships are so important, I really encourage you if you can. Once I kind of dipped my foot in there, even though I was the first one, very few women, there was one Black woman. Yeah, I just felt it. I was like, oh my God, I just felt it. I mean, it's the way some people walk into a laboratory. Like my dad walked into a medical laboratory. He was like, oh my God, this is what I want to do. It's like, I don't want to do this. So that's why I'm like, listen to, as I write in the young readers version, I'm like, listen to those things that are happening to you when you're young and you kind of don't take stock of them. And actually it's like every little part is telling the story of like, why was it that I was so interested in the news when I was little? Why? Not everybody was. So I didn't realize that it was planting the seed of my curiosity for journalism and media. So again, listen to the own seeds that you're kind of planting. Stay connected to them. You know, they're not just random.
Right. Want to thank one of our members who would like to share with us the diversity of our immigration in the South Omaha area. And they're pointing out that if you know where El Museo Latino is right now, it was originally the Polish home of Polish immigrants, okay? And so when that became Museo Latino, they searched for a common cultural piece to share the transition, and it landed on accordion music. Now, isn't that cool?
I love that.
So, this will be a fun one. Maria, do you have a favorite childhood memory?
Well, you know, whenever I get asked these questions, I let my mind just kind of wander. And then the first image that comes to me is one that I use. So I have a lot of favorite childhood memories, definitely driving to Mexico for sure, with all 6 of us in a station wagon in the middle of winter. But when you asked that question, I immediately saw double Dutch, jumping double Dutch. I love that. On the south side of Chicago, where we were very next to the lake. So swimming in the lake, being part of the lake community. So I would say I was very lucky, even though I knew I was different and the other. I felt pretty safe. I mean, I don't want to make it Pollyannish because I knew that there were things happening. You know, Fred Hampton was murdered in my neighborhood. You know, Black Panthers were launching. There was the Democratic Convention in 1968 when police were breaking people's heads open. So but within my community and family, I definitely felt safe and happy and loved.
Right. Well, everybody, you need to look at your clocks and see that we have come to the end of our session. It's been so enjoyable. I think it might surprise you that we're that far. Maria, do you have anything that you'd like to say to our audience?
All right. So if you get the book, do me a favor and on my Instagram, send me you with a picture of you with the book. And if you can, a caption so I can say, you know, Juanita from Omaha loved Once I Was You. Please. That's very important to me because I want to put you on my Instagram feed. And the second thing is the same thing I started with. I mean, you may see me as powerful, but I am a reflection of you. I am feeding off of your power, your determination, your focus, your dreams that you are little by little making to come true. And your being at MCC is a part of that. It's part of that planting of the seed that you're making come true. So my only sadness is that I can't be there with you in person. All of you, especially La Dulce, you know, imagínate, like actually get to hug and say, I know a beauty queen. So to be continued, and I'll see you next year for sure in person. I promise, if you invite me.
Wonderful. So it's truly an honor to have you with us today, Maria. Like I said, many people have asked me, when's she coming back? For those of you who get her book, you're going to see that Sandra Cisneros describes Maria as swallowing fear as if she were a circus performer swallowing fire. Lin-Manuel Miranda states, Maria has been a champion of our triumphs, a critic of our detractors, and a driving force to right the wrongs our society faces. And Wolf Blitzer states that her book, Once I Was You, is a timely and critically important story for all Americans. So I can't wait to hear that you received your book, you've taken your picture, you've sent it to Maria on Instagram, and that you're enjoying it. So thank you. Audience members, thank you so much for joining us again. I appreciate your prioritizing your exposure to important messages like this. And for our students, Thank you for starting to develop this practice of lifelong learning, because we will always be here for you, regardless of whether or not you are still in credit classes. I look forward to continuing to see you throughout the year.